Springboard Roadshow Foundation. Legacy and legacy. Be inspired. Be motivated. Be challenged.
And the spirit of life calling.
So I just picked this quotation from Kofi Annan, which talks about globalization. And he makes a very, very solid remark about if you were arguing about globalization, you may be arguing against the laws of gravity. And I'm just wondering how many of us can really dispute or argue about the laws of gravity. It's a given that if you throw a weight in the sky, it will drop. So my interpretation of globalization, and for that matter, going global, is symbolic to the fact that it's happening. It's already happened. There's nothing much we can do about it except to just follow. Okay, next one. I also put in the fact that science and technology has really, really pushed globalization afar. You can just look around and imagine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we never had too many companies crossing boundaries to set up businesses. There were just a couple of indigenous, companies thriving, except the Chinese and probably, if you want, the Lebanese who ventured ashore. With science and technologies enabled companies to come into different countries. They are able to, for example, I'm able to sit in my office and just dial a 5-digit number and I'm talking to somebody in Denver or Australia. And that's easy. It gives the investors the courage and the confidence that you can invest and get feedback from the country in which you are investing. So globalization is good, but it is science and technology that is driving it. At the same time, we talk about WhatsApp, we talk about LinkedIn, we talk about Skype, and all of those things. It's eventually shrinking the world into what I call a very manageable size. So you don't really need to travel several hours to see somebody. You can just sit down in your house, in your room, on your bed, and Skype and get a person. Science and technology is going to continue the development. I think about a month ago, I've forgotten the name, but there was this new computer systems coming up where you'll be able to, just act as if it's a paper. You type, squeeze in your pocket, and you're gone. Not even a laptop. You understand? So that is how the globe is shrinking. For me personally, I see opportunities, as a result of the world opening. And of course, there are also challenges. One of the opportunities that I see is the fact that we can be prosperous in our own country. I think Kafi made a number of references about how Sunday in Bar, a local footballer could just thrive from nowhere. We have a lot of businessmen, even in Sunyani, who are making it really good. And they're making it good because other things have gone global. You may be in your own setting, and you have a global company come next to your doorstep. You take the opportunity in whatever way that you can seize that opportunity to make things work for you. I also see a challenge in the sense that, sometimes we're having all these investors come into our country, but do we have the skills that it takes? And the skills that I'm talking about, are they sharp enough, razor sharp, that, you get in there and they're like, wow, this is the guy. You're doing your work, you don't need to be taking through the corners and supervise all the way. That's what investors want. You can self-supervise, you have the initiative, and you have the drive. Do we have those skills? And those are the things that I'm going to be talking to you about in some more detail in a few minutes. So we need to actually groom our skills very well. I also think that we need to, as a people and as young students, as young entrepreneurs, move beyond our comfort zone. I'll tell you a story, a personal story afterwards. And tough decisions I had to make when I started school. But I had to move beyond my comfort zone into unknown territory and then started taking the risk. And with that effort, over time, it saw me where I am today speaking to you. And if you asked me 18 years ago if I'll be here speaking, I'll probably say no because I was too shy. But here I am. It's not my hobby like coffee anyway, and then changing your mindset, I think, is also very crucial. A lot of us are very fixated on some ideas, maybe because of our cultural values, you really don't want to move. You're going to be working in a very cosmopolitan environment or multinational environment, and people's cultures, people's mindsets are different. Okay, so we need to broaden our horizon. We need to challenge the status quo and adopt and adapt to other cultures. Next slide, please. So, actually, my discussion is developing your global brand. Okay, with all the opportunities that are staring at us, good ones, and all the challenges that we have, how do we individually try to build a brand that connects to the rest of the world? Because your brand that you're building is not just for Sudan, it's not just for Ghana, it's not just for Africa. But if it has to go global, then it needs to cut through. So I have 4 things that I want to talk about. Building our skills. Okay, I want to talk about connection with the world. There's so much going on. Are we connected to the world? Are we a citizen of the world? Most of us are students, okay? How are we looking at us as students versus the corporate world? Eventually, when you get to the corporate world, how are you going to manage? You know, there are dynamics there, and you need to be mindful of that. And of course, the last one is for me the most interesting, focus. You need to pay attention to what you're doing. Don't get off track. And so this is the message that I would like to discuss with you. Next slide, please. I'm sure you all can see a big construction site with some skills. It's the foundation. Building your skills, be it going to an academic campus like most of you would be here, or be it taking some online programs, whatever you're doing is building your foundation for what is yet to come in the future that we don't know. Now, I'll tell a little story when I was doing my master's program, and it had to do with the way that I was taught or have been taught in school. Right from primary school, it was always like, you know, you have to just cram this thing, go to the exam hall, leave it in there, work out, 100%, there you go, bingo. So I went to school and it was a module on waste management. It said, well, open book examination. I was so excited. In fact, I knew open book, you're going to send all the books, all the information that you need into the exam room. So I did. I never really rehearsed as much as I should have. So I got to the room and, you know, packed. There were a pile of books, honestly. And then when they said start work, we flipped over. There was only one question for 3 hours. And I bet you for 2 hours, I found myself, you know, all over the place. And I opened this page and close it, open the other one, close it. 2 hours, I didn't do anything. Until I settled down, it was left with 1 hour. And I just managed, to be honest with you, I'm being very honest. I just managed to copy a few things. It didn't fail me. I got a pass mark, but not a mark that I would have actually had if I had studied and understood what I was learning. So for me, from that point on, it taught me one simple thing, that if whatever you're learning, you need to understand what is behind it. You need to understand the principles and the concepts. And I can tell you for a fact that today, a lot of the things that I do when I coach my staff, I don't really look into a book again. Because right after that paper, I learned to really understand what is behind those concepts, and it has helped. Today, I still use it. So the point I'm trying to make is building your skills is very important, but don't just, for the sake of the fact that there's a program being run somewhere and you get a certificate, yeah, you go get it. And then at the end of the day, you pile a set of certificates and then write an application thinking you get a job. You may not get a job. You may, and if you do get a job, you'll be tested in the real world. So please make sure that you're building skills that are set on solid foundation. Next one. Well, what I didn't talk about was a couple of online educational websites. And I don't know if you have time to write them, but of course I can make this presentation available as well. But there are so many sites that, you know, we all can go in there and Google or search and find out where are we going to get scholarships, you know, to enhance our educational platforms and skills. So I'll leave that with you and just go to the next slide. We all talk about being a citizen of the world. What does it take? There's WhatsApp, there's Skype, there's LinkedIn, so many things. And these are all very, very, very useful websites, very useful tools. But like everything else, if you don't use it rightly, it will damage you. You find yourself Skyping all the time instead of actually doing something productive with your time. I never, for example, until, to be honest with you, like late last year, no, 2 years ago, sorry, ventured to go into LinkedIn. I always saw friends send me the invitation, LinkedIn, join my LinkedIn. I just ignore it because I was too busy working. And I never gave it any shot. Until one day I was less busy, and I said, okay, let me just, try this LinkedIn thing. And when I punched in, I was amazed. The kind of people that I saw in that, website was just amazing. CEOs, top-ranking people. I got to know some of the top Newmont directors and colleagues, and quickly we've been linking up. The next thing I got to know was, I could even advance to put my CV on there. And it's amazing. Well, for me, day in, day out, I'm just not interested in another job. All the Newmont guys, please. But I'm just not interested in another job. But every day you get calls, people are asking, I have an opportunity, I want to talk to you. Those are the opportunities that we can use. The skills where we can put people are also looking for skills. So if you happen to be lucky, somebody can pick you up. So my point here is, just please be a citizen of the world, be trendy, and read wide. All of those things would help. That's a very interesting one. Before I came, this is my first time on Springboard. I wasn't very sure, but I got to know it was mostly students. So I thought, hey, what can I put in there to prompt people about school and then also about the corporate world? So, you have to go to high school, you go to college, you graduate, you find a new job. If you work very hard, you get promoted, right? And when you get promoted, you go to the manager level. Eventually, you go to the CEO of the company. Of course, you may not need to go through all this. After school, you could just open your small company and be your own CEO anyway. But going global or working for a multi-national company, this may be the trend. And it takes quite a while to get to that point. So you see where the hand is. In everything that you do, like, for example, school versus corporate, you need to get a vision. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 10 years, in 15 years? You need to set your goals, okay? Because if you don't set your goals, then you don't know where you're going. I think Kaf mentioned something about you need to know where you're going. So goals, very important. I'm not going to talk about everything, but the one very important thing I would like to touch on is your values. Values are very important to me because values are what we are brought up with from our childhood. And if you don't get the right values, I tell you, it will take you a long time to get back on track. So the values that I want to share with you as young students is don't miss your classes. Be a disciplined student. Do your assignments. Keep your focus. I'll talk about focus later on in my presentation, but the values is what matters. Okay? And whatever values you have is what you take on into the corporate world. So please be mindful about that. Next slide. A bit interesting. I put the dartboard there. When you're playing the game of dart, there's usually the center that's got the highest mark. That's the sweet spot, I call it. I choose to call it that way. That's your target. That's what you need to crack in the world. So you're playing a game of dart, and you see the dartboard is far away from you, relatively. But with that small arrow, you need to really hit it. That takes a lot of focus. I don't know how many of you have played it, but it really requires you to be focused. Okay? When I talk about focus, I'm looking at it in two ways. Just like a camera, you can focus by zooming in, and you can also focus by zooming out. Most of the time, we just have what I call a worm's eye view. You know what a worm does when it's found a carcass? It's just sitting there, That's all it's got. If you look at a bird, I think the bird has got, just as Kafi was flying in today, he saw everything. He didn't realize there was no traffic. He can see everything around him. That's the bird's eye view. And the bird's eye view for me is the global picture of things, the big picture. How do we see the world ahead of us? How do we see the world in front of us? And how do we combine the two? So in other words, what I'm trying to say, cut a long story short, is I plan my life 15 years and say, what do I really want to become in 15 years? That's the bird's eye view, long-term picture. And then I start my planning based on the worm's eye view. So I'm telling you, go for the shot. It's all there. It's all set. Well, it's not as if the road is going to be easy. It's never been easy. It will never be easy. As you start momentum, you are psyched up to move. You would find barriers all the way. You would find barriers. It's how you think outside the box. There's no one solution in life. Now, the slide that I'm showing, well, you can decide to go over the obstacle. You can decide to create a tunnel and get out, underground mining for some of us. Or you can actually decide to break the wall. And those are breakthroughs. We call them breakthroughs, either by prayer camp or whatever. But there has to be a breakthrough. And I liked another example my previous speaker talked about. You know, if you're an accounting student and you see a wayside man struggling with his accounts, you're on holiday, you don't have money for school. Why can't you go and do that kind of a job, get something, and continue your school? You don't have to sit back and say, well, I don't have school fees, and therefore I won't go to school. There are so many ways to get around our humps. So I'm just encouraging you and saying, please, let's think outside the box. I can't give you all the answers, but I can tell you for sure that you are not going to have it easy. There will be those blocks that we will have to cross. And you have to make a very determined effort to go over those blocks. And here's where I really want to tell you my story. And maybe I'll be finishing the presentation much earlier, but it's a story about my first employment 18 years ago. And as I tell you this story, I still get, chills in my system. I barely worked for 2 years for a British NGO called WaterAid. And then I had to move to my first mining company. I had no or little experience. I only found this job, went for the interview, and I passed. And you can look at me 18 years on. I think I've put on a lot of weight. Calf, if you remember, I was so skinny. Yeah, so people look at you and you feel so young and they think, wow, they hardly have confidence in you. And particularly for me, I wasn't the pushy type. I was kind of insular, maybe shy a little bit. But I knew my game. I'm very competent, sort of. So I passed the interview. And then, I heard, people talking, can this guy really do the job? Because he's going to meet all the traditional chiefs. And, they're wondering if I can approach the chiefs who are elderly. And our society, if you don't have the gray hair or something, you can't really go and sit in front of a chief and negotiate or talk to him on equal terms. So there was quite a lot of doubt on my side. The second doubt was whether I had enough experience. And that pissed me off big time. I was like, is peace supposed to be sold in a market somewhere that I can go and buy? Or I need to also have the exposure and develop my experience. And that is exactly what has happened today. Today I'm sharing it. But those were the setbacks for me. Those were the things that, I kept thinking about. That was a little parrot sitting on my shoulder and telling you, quit. Get out of here. It's not your fault. But one thing remained with me, the fact that I had left WaterAid. I resigned myself. And I didn't have a job. I was still a very young guy. I was energetic. And I was just determined to move on. The sweetest part of the story is yet to come. All these initial 2 weeks that I joined the company was in Accra. So I still got to go to my home, my home, see my family, hang around the joints as a young boy, until I got to the field. And this was around Manson Quanta, those who know Manson Quanta. And where the mine was, I bet you, it's in the middle of a jungle. Seriously. And I mean it literally. I got there and I was like, wow. Okay. But the salary was good. Because the salary then was like 5-10 times what I was getting. Huge. So the next day, miners in the boot, right? They gave me the hard, fresh safety boot. Really hard. It's not, soft or malleable, but it's just rigid. I wore it, dressed up, went to the field. And the pickup took us, right? Now, we did all the work in the bush, saw snakes for the first time, second time, I was scared, terrified. And then when we walked, I think about 3 kilometers to the nearest town, waiting for the vehicle to pick us to the camp, all we were told was that the vehicle has gone to Ubwasi. So we had to walk 8 kilometers to the site. In fact, actually that night, my leg was, the next day I couldn't even wake up to go and, pee. The next morning, I was still limping, and I had to do another 5 kilometers. At that point, I just said, look, I'm sorry, I don't think I want this job. Yeah, but there was something that was still talking to me, bearing in mind that I had those who were doubting me and saying, well, he can't do it. And I wanted to prove a point. I had a point that I wanted to prove. And I really, really said no. But at the back of it, the money to count it. Because even though I was thinking about those ones, I was thinking about the cash as well. So I stayed on. And to prove them wrong, what I did was, and honestly speaking, I didn't know anything about the mine, but I had a department to start afresh. There was not a single paper, nobody to mentor you, zero. So what I did was, there were a couple of mining companies in operation. And I thought, why do you have to reinvent the wheel? Okay? It's the initiative. So I took it upon myself to go visit all those operating mines. Every month, I go there for 1 day, sit down, and I used to come across this term, tailings dam. And I was like, what is this tailings dam thing? I read about it and I'm confused. But when I get to the field, and they show me the tailings dam, how it works, the engineering behind it, I understood it. But opportunity was, I had 2 years before we become operational. So that was preparing me. Those field trips were preparing me. As soon as the mine became operational, honestly, I implemented everything religiously, to be honest. It was, really spot on. And this was the beginning of my success. 1 year after the mine operated, we had a visit from the Parliamentary Select Committee on Mines and Energy and Environment, I think. And they went around all the mining companies in Ghana, and they named my company that I was leading as the best. So I had beaten all those companies that I had gone to steal apart from. Yeah, but I saw different things, put it together, and that was it. Well, the EPA did not believe what the Parliamentary Select Committee said, and they said, well, we are the regulators. We're going to do our own investigation and assessment. So in 1999, they came back again and said, well, they went around all the mining companies, about 9 of them, did the assessment, and again, the team that I was leaving, we were again adjudged the best environmental company. For me, these were 2 very important achievements of a team that I had led with that determination and that initiative and focus of going around all the mining companies and looking at what everybody is doing and piecing it together. Now, with those 2 awards, what else can you do? My company only had to give me a promotion. And that was my first promotion. I was really very elated about it. And it was not just a promotion, but I was also given a sponsorship to go to Australia for a leadership training program in 1999. And that was when I began forming my skills and garnishing myself as a young and upcoming leader. And of course, it never ended there. But it's quite a long story. I need to end somehow with some lessons. So, for me, throughout all those years and all the achievements, I continued to work. We never ever picked a consultant to do any report. I was doing them after work. Right? So I work, the whole day. And in the evening, I go back to the office, sit down until midnight, get those reports done. It was just by hard work. And I did that for 10 years. I was not counting anything. I was not asking for any reward. I was just doing it. But I think in 2002, when the gold prices were a bit low, the company decided to suspend operations and everybody was made redundant. Everybody. We're actually being paid a redundancy package, including myself. And I was just having a chat with one of my superiors at the bar, and I said, he asked me, oh, Paul, so what would you be doing? I said, oh, wow. I've had 10 years, work after school. I really feel like upgrading myself. So I'm more interested in doing a master's or a PhD, for that matter. I said, wow, okay. That sounds interesting. Why don't you send us a proposal? I was like, Hello? Are you kidding me? I mean, like, everybody is going home. We've been paid our redundancy. I want to go and do my schooling, and they're asking me for a proposal. I wrote a proposal, I sent it to the board, and it was accepted. And not just accepted, it was accepted, they sponsored me to the UK. That was when I did my master's. I mean, it was like full boarding, feeding, plus chop money. Everything. Now, on top of that, I had to even sign there was a proviso that if they sponsored me, they'll give me a 2-year work with a company. I was like, that's even better. And when I came back from the UK, it was almost as if luck was just on my side. They gave me some role within Ghana, and then they extended it to Mali. So it was like regional on my CV. I think I did a good job. And in the second year, they gave me the whole of Africa, which included Tanzania. And for me, it's one thing that I'll never forget because it's improved my perception of the world. I joined a global company. They sent me globally. I worked in some of the African continents and saw everything. The final one that almost happened, I refused, was they wanted to send me to Australia with my family to work there. And I said, no, thank you. I had done 12 years with one company. I just needed to broaden my horizon with another company. So I really thank them, and I, up to date, show appreciation to that company. So the lesson that I want to draw with you is, yes, people are going to doubt you when you say you're going to be Mr. That or Mrs. That. It's really up to you to prove people wrong. It's up to you. You're going to have people say, oh, that person cannot do it. I mean, it's very similar to the same AFCON thing. I think the Nigerian coach was seriously doubted if he could bring the cup back. And I was watching him. I was watching his moods. He was calm, cool. He won the cup, and he's resigned. Out. So for me, just always keep that bad news, okay? Keep the bad news. Let those people who doubt you be the fuel for your success. Just don't accept the defeat. And those challenges that I talked about, don't just have a tunnel vision. Think outside the box. Challenges are with us daily. I have challenges. I haven't finished my story. Where I am, I think I still have a potential to go forward. Don't settle. Keep looking. Each one of you in this hall, you can see has a bright light. Don't quench your fire. Keep it. And just keep it going. With all the challenges, you will succeed. You have what it takes. And probably if I tell you about my earlier days in school and me standing here and talking, well, it's another story to be told another day. But I really just want to end it on this note and say, hard work pays, skills matter, initiative matters. A lot of us, the young ones coming up, really lack that initiative of taking one step. Unless you're told, pick this and go and put it there, the thing is lying there. If you don't have that initiative and drive, you will probably be sitting there and the world is moved. So, thank you very much.